Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal ladzina an'amta 'alayhim ghayril maghdubi 'alayhim waladdallin. Please also recite a Surah Fatiha for Marhooma Syeda Abrarunnisa, binte Syed Zafar. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal ladzina an'amta 'alayhim ghayril maghdubi 'alayhim waladdallin. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فسبح بحمد ربك وكن من الساجدين واعبد ربك حتى يأتيك اليقين صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات بيج محمد Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're commemorating the first birthday of Syed Abrarunnisa, and it is amazing that I can recall reciting the Soem Majlis of this Marhooma. It's been a whole year, but it seems like it was only yesterday that we were gathered here remembering her and trying to send the Thawab of the Eisal-e-Thawab Majlis by getting together. And it's been a year since she passed away. And we remember also, I don't know how many of you do, that when we had the Soem Majlis, we also mentioned one unique aspect of Marhooma Syeda Abrarunnisa. And that was her date of wafat and her date of biladat. She died on 19th of Ramadan, and that is when Amirul Mu'mineen was struck by the sword. And she was born on 13th of Rajab. So Marhooma had both of these very unique dates which are associated with our first Imam Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. When I was preparing for tonight's majlis, I was hoping that I would have a little bit more time. Obviously it's the month of Ramadan, and we can delay namaz 5-10 minutes, but because everybody's fasting, it's very difficult to delay. I mean, people might delay the fast, but the namaz, but it'll be very difficult to delay the breaking of the fast. So I'll try and see if I can concisely put all of the arais that I have brought in front of you today. Without any delay, I recited this verse from Surah Hijr, verse number 99, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing our Prophet. It's not the address to mu'mineen, muslimeen, or anyone else. It's the address to our Prophet. He says, فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَكُنْ مِنَ السَّاجِدِينَ. Glorify and praise your Lord and be with those who prostrate themselves before God. Worship your Lord حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ, until you achieve the ultimate certainty. Now in this regard, we see that what is this ultimate certainty or yaqeen which is being discussed? And a lot of people have taught or discussed and given the commentary of the word yaqeen as the ultimate certainty that, what we receive yaqeen. For example, the 3 stages of yaqeen that they talk about, ilmul yaqeen, ainul yaqeen, and haqqul yaqeen. That when you see the athar, you reach that it is something, then you see it with your own eyes, and when you can witness or you can feel that thing, that sort of yaqeen. But that yaqeen does not really explain this ayah completely. Why? That means it is, in other words, saying that if you reach that ultimate level of yaqeen, وَعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى, so that go ahead and worship your Lord until that yaqeen. Then in other words, it is telling us that once you reach that yaqeen, you no longer need to worship. And this was the misinterpretation which was given by some of the commentators, majority of them belonging to the Sufi, or that sect, if you want to call it, which exists and still in our different parts of the world, saying that if you reach that level of certainty where you have this connection of shuhud, there's no longer need of this physical worship that we do. And so they went ahead and they nullified some of these worships, for example, prayers 5 times a day and so on and so forth. This is where ulama haq, taking the tafsir from Ma'sumin alayhi salatu wasalam and giving us the exact meaning that hatta yatiyak al-yaqeen over here does not mean your personal level of yaqeen and iman. Rather, it is referring towards the death, which is the ultimate yaqeen. That everyone who embraces death, once they reach death, this is where they have reached the highest level of yaqeen. Why? Now they can see things which they had veils in front of them. And this is the reason why, because we can go ahead and look in the life of all of the Ma'sumin, look in the life of Rasulullah, that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling him, worship until you reach yaqeen, what is there for Rasulullah to reach the yaqeen? Yaqeen, Rasulullah is at the highest level of yaqeen. Amirul Mu'mineen is at the highest level of yaqeen, to the extent that Imam is saying, لَوْ كُشِفَ الْغِطَى مَزْدَدْتُ يَقِينًا. If all the veils were lifted from in front of me, it will not increase one bit in my yaqeen. So what kind of yaqeen would there be for Amirul Mu'mineen, for Rasulullah? So that if there was the yaqeen, the kind that they are explaining, then Prophet and Rasulullah should not be worshipping. But we see that Prophet worshipped so much that Quran had to come and tell, Ya ayyuhal muzammil, Ya ayyuhal muddassir, qumil layla illa qalila. Stand up at night for worship, but little bit. Do not prolong it too much. We don't want you to make it latashqa. We don't want you to make it to be a mushaqqat upon yourself. Prophet was worshipping so much that his feet were there were wounds, or there were a waram on the feet of the Prophet. But to the extent we see that Amirul Mu'mineen as well, he himself so much worshipped that he actually was martyred, or he was struck by the sword while he was in the mihrab. That is why it says qutila aliyun lishiddati adlihi, because of his shiddat of his adl and the worship that Ali was performing. So that was not the case of yaqeen, brothers and sisters. What yaqeen is being referred to over here is that when death approaches you, worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until you have seen this death. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And so we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling Prophet, فَصَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ. Go ahead and glorify and praise your Lord. وَكُمْ مِنَ السَّاجِدِينَ. And be among those who are sajideen. What is the reason behind Allah exhorting and advising Prophet for these couple of things? Sabbih means to glorify. We say Subhanallah, Subhanallah. And then bihamdihi, to say Alhamdulillah. And also at the end he says, وَكُنْ مِنَ السَّاجِدِينَ. The ultimate glory and ultimate way of thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the form of sajda. 3 things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is advising our Prophet. We see that there are athar attached with this glory, with this hamd, and with this sajda. And that is the reason Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling Prophet. Prophet was in a way needed consoling from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is why this ayat was revealed. What was happening at that time, the kuffar were making fun of religion, mocking the teachings that Prophet was bringing about. And that was something which was, I won't say demoralizing Prophet, but it was in a sense that Prophet was feeling the ihsas of those kalam, or those words which were coming out from the mouths of kuffar in regards to these commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is where Allah, to console the heart of the Prophet, He says, this is what you should do. فَصَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَكُنْ مِنَ السَّاجِدِينَ. Why? What is the asar of this sajda, or what is the asar of this tasbih? The first asar of this tasbih we can derive from this ayat ayat is that the words of these kuffar will not have any effect on you when you do the tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you and I want to learn something, this is not just for the Prophet, but more so for us. The commands are that if you do the tasbih of Allah, if you are among the sajideen and you're doing the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regardless of what people are saying about your faith, it will not have any asar of that sort upon you, which will make you lose your faith. Second thing, the second asar is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you and grant you this power due to this tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you're doing. So don't underestimate the power of this tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Third, it will give you this cleansing. Now obviously Prophet does not require any cleansing, but these messages are for you and I, that it will, this tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and this glorification will give you what? It will give you this cleansing of the heart. And then fourthly, it will intensify your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if it had gone some sort of weakness in it. And lastly, it will, your intentions will go stronger when you do this tasbih and prostrate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat Piji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa. So we see that what is being mentioned over here is three things: tasbih, hamd and sajda. And this is where sajda obviously being the part of this salat. And we over here see that if our salat is not correct, then what good the sajda would be. Among the traditions of the Prophet, when he went on Miraj, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked Prophet that, "O Prophet, بِأَيِّ وَقْتٍ يَتَقَرَّبُ الْعَبْدُ إِلَى اللَّهِ?" At what time is my servant closest to me? Prophet, out of the knowledge, he said, "Oh Allah, you inform me." Allah replied by saying, إِذَا كَانَ سَاجِدًا أَوْ جَائِعًا. The servant is closest to me when he is in the state of prostration, sajda, and he is hungry, ja'i'. Both of the things which are combined together in this month of Ramadan. Every person over here, whoever is fasting, and when you go in the form of sajda, that is the ultimate closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is what is being discussed over here. But if the salat itself has faults in it, you need two things for the salat to be accepted. One is that it should not have any defects. Second, the sharait and the conditions should be fulfilled. We see in the example that I usually give is that, for example, if there's a hall, or this hall, for example, I don't know the dimensions of the hall, let's say it says 50 by 50 meters or 50 by 50 feet, and you want to put a carpet in this hall. You go ahead and order a carpet which is 20 by 20 feet. Two things are missing in this carpet. One thing is missing in this carpet, which is that it is short. So the carpet is not adequate for this hall because it will be shorter to the length which is needed. That is a defect that you see in this carpet. At another time, the carpet is of the same dimensions, 50 by 50, but there are stains on it. At this point, it's not defected, but it has aib and ma'yub on it. So both things has to be fulfilled, brothers and sisters, when we stand up for the performance of the salat in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it should not have any defects in it, and all the conditions should be fulfilled. Conditions from the sense that when we perform this prayer, it is with the ikhlas, sincerity towards qurbatan ilallah. And when we perform these prayers, it should not have any types of defects remaining in it. And this is where Masumeen have given us advice by saying that if you feel that there's some sort of defect in your salat, you can fulfill that defect by performing the nawafil. This nawafil will go ahead and bridge the gap and make the salat the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants it to be recited. Salawat Biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Going back to the first thing that we have said in regards to yaqeen, some people came to Prophet and said, "We've heard that there were companions of Hazrat Isa who used to be able to walk on water." Prophet replied by saying, if their level of yaqeen was more, they would be able to walk on the skies and on the clouds as well. So there's always room for improvement. There's always room for increment as far as the yaqeen is concerned. Now, since I have brought the topic into salat, I want to take the last 8 or 9 minutes that I have and focusing on this salat. A lot of people complain and say that, our kids are not inclined towards salat. They're not performing the salat. Or, as far as some of the family members are concerned, they are not fulfilling as far as this duty of salat is concerned. So what is the formula to encourage them so that they go ahead and perform the salat? This is where, if this is a question that you have really asked, I want you to pay attention as to how we can find the examples and how we can find the solution for that. If a person is lacking or is not namazi, for example, and lacks, there's a reason why people are not praying. One of the reasons that is mentioned in Quran in regards to salat, it says, وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ. In another ayah it says, فَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِعِينَ. Seek assistance through salat and fasting. Why? First of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is exhorting you towards it. Second, وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِعِينَ. It is difficult task. It can only be performed by those who are humble. Humiliation in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Khashi'een. Salat and sabr is only done with those who are khashi'een. Illa ala al-khashi'een. So those who have this khushu. What is this khushu? Khushu is translated as humbleness. Humbleness meaning having softness in your heart. We look at Quran again, it says, وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا لَلْخَاشِعِينَ. Salat is heavy on everyone except on humble ones. So humbleness means having softness of the heart. How do you get this khashi'een? How do you get to the state of khushu? You remind them of the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you remind them of the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will have this development of khushu' in the people. And I'll give you some examples in front of that. Count the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If a child shows arrogance in front of the parents, or the daughter shows arrogance in front of the mother, for example, and this father and this mother, they start counting the favors. Today you're talking to us in this fashion. Look what we have done for you in your life. Did not pay for your education, did not buy you that, did not provide for a house, did not provide for this, did not provide for that. All of the things that you have provided to your children, you start counting them. Hopefully it doesn't reach that level that you have to count these things to your kids. But when you do count, what happens? They feel sort of ashamed that we are speaking up to those parents who have done so much for us. What are you doing? You're counting the favors that you have done towards them. The same way they feel ashamed and they become khashi' and humble and feel a little bit humility in front of you, the same way you have to bring this humbleness as far as counting the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is concerned. We look at another example. I don't know if you've seen this video which gives a very good message. Then an old father walks out to a park with his son, and he asks his son that, what is that? Pointing towards a bird. Son says, it is a sparrow. After a little while, he asks again, what is that? He said, I told you, it's a sparrow. After a while, he asks again, what is that? This time the son gets annoyed, as you would be. He said, I told you, how many times am I going to tell you? It's a sparrow. Right away, listening to that, the father pulls out an old diary, showing them what he has written down when his son was younger. He said, once I took you out to a park, and you not only asked me once, twice, but almost 30 times, what is that? And every time you asked me, I replied by saying, oh my dear son, it is a sparrow. Oh my lovely son, it is a sparrow. Oh my kind son, it is a sparrow. Oh my dear son, this is a sparrow. Not once did I yell at you. This is where the son would feel humbleness towards the father. Why? He was making him count the favor that he had done before him. So what we need to do, we need to count the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to become humble towards Him. What has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala given to us? What is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us? We look at the verses, Alam naj'al lahu aynayn. Has He not given you the two eyes? وَلِسَانًا lisanan wa shafatain? Has He not given you the lips and the tongue? Alam naj'al al-arda mihada? Has He not spread the earth for you? He says, going on, wal jibali awtada? Has He not created these mountains for you? Waj'alna sirajan wa haja? Has He not given these lights, in the form of sun and whatnot for you? Wa anzalna min al-mu'asirati ma'an thajjaja? Has He not pour down this water for you? We remind them of these favors that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done. These are the favors that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done for you. If a person gives me, a pair of binoculars or gives me a camera, I'll be thankful towards that person all my life. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you two lenses. You can use to take black and white or color pictures with it. They'll be with you forever without free of charge. Yet we do not thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat bheji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Tell them every living being is in the hands of the Creator. Everyone will leave with full hands. Why are you leaving with empty hands? Kullun lahu qanitun, Surah Baqarah says. Everyone is humble towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everyone is doing the tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everyone is glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sabbaha lillahi ma fi samawati wal ard. And it's not just in the past tense. Yusabbihu lillahi ma fi samawati wal ard. Even in the present tense, in the future tense, that everything and every human being is doing the sajda to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wan najmu wa shajara yasjudan. The stars and the trees are doing sajda to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why are you depriving yourselves of doing the sajda to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Remind them of that. Sometimes it says in paradise, sometimes it talks about in Quran about the paradise, sometimes it talks about the Jahannam. We refer towards Surah Muddassir, and I'm running out of my time. We look at the verses of Surah Muddassir as far as the criminals are concerned. It's a fi jannatin yatasa'aluna 'anil mujrimeen. The mujrimeen will be asked in the Jannat, from the people in Jannat. What will they be asked? He will be saying, Ma salakakum fi saqar. What happened that you ended up being in the hell? The first reply that they will give? Lam naku minal musallin. We were not among those who prayed. Our sixth Imam, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, mentions a hadith in which he said, La yanalu shafa'atuna man istakhaffa bis salah. That person will not receive our shafaat and intercession who takes salat lightly. Lightly, istighfaf of salat. Imam is saying you're not receiving our shafaat because you're taking salat istighfafan. He's not even talking about those people who don't pray at all. Because there's an ayat in Quran for those who don't pray at all. Why these people? Ma salakakum fi saqar. What happened that you found yourself in the hell? Lam naku minal musallin. We were not among the worshippers. We did not perform the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the way to the end. Hatta atana al-yaqeen. Until we reached death, and then we realized what a bad trade that we have made. So brothers and sisters, it should not be too late for us to realize how bad of a trade that we have made. And if you are taking this salat lightly, Imam says you will not receive our intercession. And if you don't pray at all, according to these ayat of Surah Muddassir, the abode for you will be the hellfire. This is where we see that some people who don't pray, they raise an argument saying God does not need our prayers. The answer to that is, when you're building a house, you can either build it in the direction of the sun or in the opposite direction of the sun. It does not make any difference to the sun which way your house is facing, but it affects you because you're depriving yourself from the sunlight. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need your prayers, but you and I are definitely in need of this prayer. Salawat bheji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa. Lastly, this is the majlis for the Eisal-e-Thawab. Khawateen ki, एक खातून की, एक मरहूमा की मजलिस है. कल मैंने आपके सामने जनाब खदीजा के कुछ मसाइब पढ़े थे. इससे पहले कि मैं मसाइब के दो जुमले आपके सामने पेश करूं, हमारे यहाँ खवातीन को भी खुदावंद मुताल ने माल से नवाजा है. कुछ ने अपने काम के ज़रिए इतना माल कमाया है और कुछ ने बहरहाल विरसे में ये माल कमाया है. लेकिन माल को किस तरीके से यूज़ करना है, इस्तेफादा करना है, ये जनाब हज़रत खदीजा से इंसान सीखे. حضرت خدیجہ سے بڑھ کر کسی کے پاس مال نہ تھا، نہ اس زمانے میں نہ آج کے زمانے میں اگر کوئی کمپیئر کرے، ایک خاتون ہونے کے ناطے کسی کے پاس اتنا مال نہ تھا، لیکن خدیجہ نے سلام اللہ علیہا نے کس طریقے سے اس مال کا استفادہ کیا، اس طریقے سے اس مال کا استفادہ کیا کہ اس مال کو خدا کی راہ میں لٹا دیا۔ خداوند متعال نے محبوب الہی حضرت محمد مصطفیٰ صلی اللہ علیہ وآلہ وسلم کو آپ کو عطا کر دی۔ جب آپ کی وفات کا وقت آیا ہے، کل میں آپ کے سامنے بیان کر رہا تھا کہ کس طریقے سے جناب خدیجہ نے رسول اللہ سے گزارش کرنے کے بجائے جناب زہرا سے گزارش کی۔ جناب سیدہ زہرا 5 سال کی عمر ہے، یہ گزارش کرتی ہیں کہ اپنے بابا سے کہنا کہ میرا کفن، اپنے لباس سے میرا کفن مجھے عطا کریں۔ اور یہ بھی کہا تھا میں نے کہ آپ اگر محبت کے اس درجے کو دیکھنا چاہتے ہیں، یوسف اور زلیخا کی کہانی کہاں پہ ہے، لیکن یہاں دیکھیے محبت کا وہ درجہ جناب خدیجہ کا کہ کیا کہہ رہی ہیں کہ نہ صرف اس دنیا میں محبت تھی، بلکہ میں چاہتی ہوں وفات کے بعد بھی جب میں قبر میں چلی جاؤں تو رسول کی خوشبو کو استشمام کر سکوں، لہٰذا مجھے وہ کفن بھی عطا کیجیے جو آپ کے لباس سے بنا ہوا ہو۔ بس وہ آخری وقت آ رہا تھا، نزع کا وقت تھا، احتضار کا وقت تھا۔ کہا میری بیٹی کو اس کمرے سے باہر لے جایا جائے، میں نہیں چاہتی کہ میری بیٹی کی طرف نگاہ پڑے جب میری جان نکل رہی ہو۔ کتنا خیال ہے، ہمارے خدیجہ اس دنیا سے گزر جاتی ہیں، رسول اللہ واپس آتے ہیں، غم و اندوہ کی حالت میں واپس آئے ہیں گھر میں، بیٹی ہے گھر میں، پوچھتی ہے بیٹی بابا کی ابا کو ہاتھ لاتے ہوئے، تکان دیتے ہوئے، بابا این امی، میری والدہ کہاں ہیں؟ کس طریقے سے یہ باپ جواب دے؟ جبرائیل آتے ہیں، کہتے ہیں کہ میں آپ کی مدد کرتا ہوں اے رسول اللہ، جناب سیدہ سے کہہ دیجئے کہ خدا سلام بھیجتا ہے اور یہ کہہ رہا ہے کہ پریشان نہ ہو۔ ارے آپ کی والدہ گرامی، ارے آپ کی والدہ گرامی کے لیے خداوند متعال نے جنت میں یاقوت، سرخ یاقوت کا ایک قصر بنایا ہے، ادھر آرام سے ہیں۔ میں کہوں گا یہی وقت آیا جب جناب سیدہ کی شہادت کا وقت آتا ہے، محراب میں تھیں، اس وقت کہا کسی کو نہ آنے دیا جائے، اس وقت جب جناب سیدہ اس دنیا سے گزر گئیں۔ اب جب بچوں کو لایا جاتا ہے، کہا آؤ زینب، ام کلثوم، حسن حسین، ماں کا آخری دیدار کر لو۔ جب لایا جا رہا، ارے زینب اور حسین نے آنے سے انکار کر دیا، حسین نے آنے سے انکار کر دیا۔ کہا بیٹا کیوں نہیں آتے ہو؟ کہا میں جب تک نہ آؤں گا، جب تک مادر گرامی اسی انداز سے نہ بلائیں گی۔ ارے کفن کے بند کھلے، ہاتھ باہر نکلے، حسین ارے آ جا میرے لخت جگر، صلی اللہ محمد والے